How did your high school crush turn out as an adult? She worked with the Obama administration, I forget in what capacity, got married to some politician's son. Don't remember, don't care to look it up. She's happy, and that's the only thing that matters. Oh, also she was our school's valedictorian, but she was so busy with her job she couldn't organize our high school reunion, so that's a plus. I wasn't head over heels for her, I admired her, but knew I wasn't for her. Then there's another crush of mine. We ran into each other years after graduation at a grocery store. After talking, I asked her out to dinner at my house. I pull out all the stops. I bought rainbow trout fillets and make all the fixings. 6:30 rolls around and I open the door and who the hell is this man behind her? Oh, this is my fiancé that she neglected to tell me about. Turns out they wanted to sell me on some MLM thing. She tried to cross the threshold, I put my arm out and asked them to politely leave. I turned away from the door and had my saddest meal I ever ate. I don't know why, but I was really rooting for OP in that last one. Just a tragic ending. I have a feeling she knew what she was doing. Just thought that getting in the door would help her scheme or whatever. Sorry, OP. Story 2. I had a few in high school. One ended up moving away after sophomore year and no one knew why. She reached out to me when I had a mental breakdown online and said she could understand what I was going through. Some messed up stuff happened to her, though she never said what specifically. I didn't ask further because it's not my business to pry. I'm not sure how she is now. Another got super hot after high school and did a degree in science. Again, not sure where she is now, but I think she's doing all right. The third works at a bank. We ended on bad terms, partially my fault. I found out she was making fun of me behind my back and had done so for months beforehand, so I sent her an angry message. Haven't seen her since. Story 3. To be honest, this is more junior high crush than high school, but the story stands. Back in my first day of 7th grade, I had just moved up to a new school, and I met a girl named Charlie. Well, Charlie had a twin whose name was Christine. Charlie insisted on introducing me to Christine, and yelled at her to come across the lunch area to us. Christine was very clumsy and tripped and almost landed on top of me. I fell head over heels. I, however, was too afraid to say anything. A few years later, I get out of the Navy and go home. I need a place to stay for a few days. Charlie offers Christine's spare room. I moved in, and in the middle of the night, I saw Christine for the first time since 2007. My jaw dropped. She was always attractive, but I guess she became a health nut after having 2 kids with her ex. Instantly, crush reappeared, but this time I had the post-Navy confidence and said something. Turned out she fell for me back in 2007 on that day too, but she was quite scared and nervous. Within a week of moving in, we were dating. It's been almost 4 years and we have added 2 more kids to the lot. Please send help, so many kids. Still very much in love and happy. She turned out great. A wonderful, smart, caring woman who is a sucker for dumplings and cheesy romances. Story 4. I went to a Catholic school. He was an amazing singer and super popular. I was definitely not either of those things. Pretty sure he didn't know I existed. He went to study architecture and I wound up becoming an electrician. I'm a woman, by the way. A few years later, I'm at a job up on a ladder pulling wire with one of the old-timers. The wire was stuck. So in good tradesman fashion, we were cussing up a storm at each other and the wire until it finally poked through. As I was pulling it out, I looked down to see this guy just staring at me from the bottom of the ladder. He didn't say anything. He just stared for a few moments and then walked away. You could tell he was trying to place me. I recognized him but couldn't place him for a few moments, and then I had a thought. That looked a lot like this guy, but a fat version. Later that day, I went and visited mom number 2, and she had a church bulletin sitting on her counter. She had wandered away for a moment to do something, so I picked it up to pass some time until she was done. The bulletin had a section for announcing engagements/weddings, and my jaw dropped. Here was a photo of him with another girl from our high school, newly engaged. It had been him staring at me from the bottom of the ladder. His lady friend must have been feeding him really well because he plumped up good. I was happy for him all around, but I didn't see him after that day. Story 5. They're all still extremely attractive, but their lives are that of nightmares. Kids with multiple fathers, no real career path in their 30s, still relying on their looks to get by, etc. Back in high school, I was around 300 or 350 pounds. Naturally, none of my high school crushes were into me. I managed to do pretty well since I was a trained musician then. Not school band, was trained on guitar and bass, but never had any luck with any of my crushes. I jumped around to 6 high schools, so my list of high school crushes is probably larger than most. Around 5 years ago, I ended up dropping to around 180, started riding Harleys, and decided to get back out there and catch up for lost time. I was on a 7 or so year dry spell at that point. I ended up hooking up with many of my high school crushes. To be clear, they all either reached out to me and or initiated. I wasn't purposefully trying to go out and hook up with my high school crushes. In the end, it didn't provide any great sense of validation and or vindication like you see in the movies. It's ultimately a shame, though. All that losing weight did was make me jaded and afraid to get close to anyone. I have severe trust issues now as a result of everything I've gone through by trying to explore, date, catch up for lost time, etc. I guess you can only be used and thrown away so many times before you decide to stay in the trash can and make it stop. Regardless, thanks for letting me share. Now, I promise I'm not saying this as a dunk or anything. I think OP could do really well with a little bit of therapy. Like, it sounds like he has some self-image things to work through, and it sounds like once he works through them, he could be in a really good place, you know? Anyway, good luck, OP. I hope you find yourself. Story 6. He turned out battered by life, but is still a super good person and attractive as hell. Honestly, he went to a different school than I did, but our clubs worked together. We had crushes on one another, but were dating other people, all 4 of us being good friends. I thought he was way too cool for me, very confident and fun and artistic. He obviously liked me, but I figured he was out of my league. Very attractive, alt, into all kinds of great indie and punk music, and sporty but not too much of a jock at all. Very empathetic as well. Back then, I would always fall asleep in his lap while he played with my hair. This was totally cool with our partners. Little did I know, or would have believed, I was the person to him. He thought I was the crap and super cool and attractive, and he always wanted to spend time with me. We didn't talk about it. We were both committed. Even if we knew our relationships weren't forever, we loved them. My partner from then is still my best friend now. He always kept in touch a little, checked in on me, sent me a message every few months to remind me he believed in me or hoped I had a good day. We hung out once or twice a year and always each walked away smitten and maybe a little sad. Then went back to being mired in our lives. Fast forward to 2019. He's going to beauty school and reaches out to me to see if I wanted a badly needed in hindsight haircut. After that, we started hanging out for one reason or another once every couple of weeks. Then once a week at least. Both seeing people but consensually non-monogamous. Though I was at the time very stuck in an abusive, years-long relationship with a man who had groomed me and held me back in a lot of ways. It was uncanny to get to know him again. We discovered so many similarities and alignments and things to teach one another, and when we finally had our first kiss, it was earth-shattering. It felt like I was falling into the right timeline after thinking I was on the right track for so long. Slowly, I began to realize that I could take back my life, and did. Standing up for my own needs and wants is what ultimately ended my relationship with the abusive ex. And then in January of 2020, my love proposed to me. We got a puppy, and last month we eloped. I'd say he turned out pretty great. Story 7. Mine threw away a wrestling scholarship and dropped out of college after 1 year when he couldn't stay academically eligible. He was easy on the eyes, but not a lot going on upstairs. A few years after graduation, I ran into him and a bunch of people we graduated with at a bar in our hometown when I was home visiting my parents. His fiancée, now wife, threw up all over the bar bathroom, and despite the fact that I had met her roughly 20 minutes earlier, I was the only one who was willing to help her and keep her from drowning in a pool of her own vomit in the bathroom. It was kind of awkward given the history, but I wasn't going to let the girl die on the bathroom floor of a trashy pool hall. He didn't even say thank you when I basically carried her back to him after we got her cleaned up. They made a bunch of jokes about how he did the same thing a week earlier, and she sat slumped in a bar stool until one of her friends showed up to take her home, and he went back to playing pool with his friends. I learned that apparently this is a fairly standard Friday night for them. Basically, dodged that bullet. Story 8. She is my best friend. We became boyfriend and girlfriend for a brief second in high school, like sophomore, junior year, and went our separate ways. We attended different colleges, married different people, had our own families, and all through that time we stayed in touch and friends. When I struggled with alcoholism in my 40s, she'd take my drunken calls and quietly tell me to get better in various non-judgmental ways. 3 years sober now. When her husband came down with a debilitating neurological disorder and she went bankrupt, I did my level best to encourage her and to listen. Nothing like what she did for me. She has a great job now. She had been a very successful freelancer but needed medical and stability. Her husband is still in very bad shape, but even though we're 2,500 miles apart, we still talk, She still laughs at my stupid jokes, and I still do my best to make her smile when I can. We've never hooked up or even banged. I mean, we were young when we met, and I guess that is a bit odd to some extent. Reading the top threads, it seems especially odd that we didn't destroy our marriages in some stupid fling, and our spouses know we have stayed in touch. Her husband has even expressed profound gratitude to me for being there when he is literally incapacitated and unable to talk to her. It might not be the "and then we got married" cheesy movie ending kind of thing, but it is really nice to have a friend that you can talk to for over 30 years. Story 9. Going to pick the more interesting one. Messaged me about 15 years after high school saying she had always been thinking about me and was going to visit, but was living far away. True to her word, she showed up, and we fell for each other hard when she was home. All sorts of craziness ensued in that month. Went to visit her, still really into each other, but went home and that ended it, for 2 years. Another message, more great times together, drops away for another couple of years. Next month we go on vacation and hit it off again, as if these gaps had never happened. But she ends up going out with someone else. I say screw it, I start dating someone else. She shows up at my apartment and destroys both of our relationships in one night. We end up staying close for a few months, but stuff is getting weird. I'm done with the mess. I meet a wonderful woman and get married in 6 weeks. She gets engaged and then gets married, knocks on my door almost a year later asking me to leave my wife, and I tell her no. Now we don't speak, but both have 2 kids. Wish her well, but I don't care enough to bother checking. Leave it in the past, folks. This is some advanced level of on-again, off-again, brother. Also, did you say you got married in 6 weeks after meeting someone? Surely OP meant that they're getting married in 6 weeks, right? It was a little ambiguous. Anyway, staying friends with someone after she destroys both of your relationships in one night, I don't get it, man. You must have had some crazy connection. And by that I mean you must have just thought she was really hot. That's probably what it was, wasn't it? Story 10. We were best friends. We had a crush on each other, but I didn't want to date her because, to be perfectly honest, I was immature. I switched girlfriends every couple months. I didn't want to turn my closest friend into another ex. Dumb logic, I know, but I was a kid. We stayed friends throughout our 20s, but lived in different states. She had a child with her first boyfriend, and then had a serious relationship with a woman for a few years. I was also in a serious relationship for 9 years. Both of our relationships ended, and we started talking more regularly again, just like when we were best friends growing up. We're both largely the same, but grown in respectable ways. She's in medical school after spending time as an anatomy professor, and I'm a successful commercial photographer. We've been together for over a year and a half. Her daughter has become my daughter, and we're getting married this summer. Story 11. I had several, and even dated some of them during or after high school. There was one, though, that I had a huge crush on, and she actually shut me down a couple of times. I asked her out over AIM, and she rejected me immediately. Eventually, we became kind of friends and partied together a few times. Every time I tried to get with her, she would shut me down. I moved on after I graduated. She was a year below me, and during her senior year, she dropped out and eventually got put into rehab. She was apparently on and off that crap for years, and last I checked, she was living at home with her parents and 2 kids. She was like 24. Her baby daddy was in jail for breaking into a drugstore to steal the, wait for it, Oxycontin that she was addicted to. So, yeah, even though I highly doubt we would have dated for a long time or anything, I still feel like I kinda dodged a bullet. Even though she rejected me multiple times, I feel pretty bad for how her life turned out. Hopefully it's better than it was 8 years ago. That was the last time I saw her. Story 12. I'm honestly not sure, and I haven't been able to figure it out. I've had a crush on this girl for a very long time. I've known her since 3rd grade, been friends with her since 5th, and infatuated with her since 6th to 7th. High school came and went. I asked her out once, but she was a popular kid. And once people started hearing about it, they started up a rumor around the school that I was stalking her. Apparently, from what I heard, she got scared and threatened to file a restraining order, so I didn't talk to her anymore. For some reason, unbeknownst to me, she invited me to her graduation party. She was nice to me. Her boyfriend at the time was cool, and her parents knew me, which I thought was a bit odd, but okay. Everyone was surprisingly chill. I exchanged Facebook and life went on. It's been 5 years now. I'm out of the service and we ended up talking a bunch during my deployment. She is single again, frankly a bit depressed and a stoner. Life hasn't been great to her lately, but I still like her. We had a Snapchat streak almost a year long and we actually did talk every day. We made plans to hang out, got to know each other more, talked about the future. After I got out, I planned to buy a house, and while I got everything settled, I would come live with my parents for a bit in my hometown. I bought her some gifts on the road trip. We had plans to hang out on New Year's, all was good. Problem was, once I got here, she suddenly stopped talking to me. I have no clue what's going on. I'm worried for her, but I don't want to push a situation, especially considering previous issues. I just don't think she actually likes me, even as a friend. And maybe she was just being nice to me for some reason. I hate it. I don't know what I did wrong. Story 13. I had tons of crushes throughout high school, but one of them had been my crush since elementary, and we dated briefly in junior high and were friendly in high school. My last year of high school I had to cut short because my family and I were moving back to my home country, but the last month I was there we saw each other a few times and messed around. He lived near me. He had a kid shortly after graduating from high school and just recently married his baby mama after years of dating. His kid is adorable and his wife seems pretty cool. They make a good, quirky couple. He's also the lead singer of a rock band that's moderately famous in the town we lived in. My other lifelong crush from elementary to high school is now a computer scientist. Probably makes really good money, and the last I saw, he had a gorgeous foreign girlfriend he met in college. He doesn't interact much on social media, but about 10 months ago he reached out on Facebook to say hi. The conversation died out after a while, but it was great to talk to him for a bit. I grew up in a small town in the American South, and still have a ton of classmates from school on Facebook and Instagram. The big majority are already married. We're all in our mid-20s. Many got married straight out of high school or got pregnant and have multiple kids, some with different dads. Others graduated from high school and are now professionals working in various companies. Some are still in grad school or in the process of applying, including me, and some are single and just having the time of their lives. Very few moved out to different countries and are working there now. It's pretty cool to see where we're all at this stage in life. Unfortunately, 2 of my high school classmates never made it to their mid-20s. A very popular classmate of mine I was friends with in junior high died at 21 after swerving in her BMW and hitting a concrete wall. Another ex-classmate recently died from shooting drugs or something like that. Story 14. My childhood crush. I still cringe when I think about back then. See, I was the nerdier girl in the group of popular kids at school, so I often watched on the sidelines as all the boys would flirt with all of my friends. They would ask them to dance at school dances, and I would listen to all of my girlfriends' kissing stories and growth from there. The most attention I got would be the occasional pity case where my friends would try to force some poor cast out to date me or whatever. It was painful. I was a late bloomer. Braces, glasses, no sense of style, the works. I at least prided myself with having a great personality, easily able to make friends and being sporty. Plus, having 4 older super cool brothers and sisters helped my societal status in those rough years. Anyway, there was this one guy that I truly ogled over. Let's call him T. T was smart, charming, athletic, nice, handsome, all the bells and whistles. Everyone loved him. I always admired him from afar and cherished any fleeting interaction with him. Now, first day of 7th grade comes, and look who is assigned in the seat in the adjoining desk across from me. It's T. My dreams had been answered. So, what do I do with this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity? Be awkward? No. Shy? Nope. Flirty? No. I turned into a bully. I would steal his gel pens, write in his notebooks, tussle his hair, kick him under the desk, basically anything to get a reaction out of him. Well, one day I show up and T isn't there. I notice his desk is empty. It wasn't long before I noticed he was now sitting on the opposite side of the room. My stomach dropped. I wasn't stupid. And sure enough, before lunch that day, I was pulled aside by my luckily very kind teacher and spoken to about boundaries and respecting my fellow classmates. Later, I found out his mother had written a letter to the school about my obnoxious behavior. I was so embarrassed and upset with myself that for the next 5 years, I avoided any interaction with T. Couldn't even look him in the eyes or participate in friendly banter. Years later, we ended up moving to the same city a few years after graduating from our respective universities. Luckily, the city's just large enough that it would be rare to run into each other, but I did fleetingly notice that T was living here as well. Well, a few years ago, on St. Patty's Day, I'm out at the bars with a large group of my newer adult friends, and I see some guys from high school. Cool. We run over, hug each other, do some drunken pleasantries. It was going to be a fun night. Out of the corner of my eye, ICT, looking as fine as ever. Now, I should mention, I'm no longer the gawky, awkward 13-year-old I once was. I'm 5'6", 115 pounds, go to the gym daily, finally found a sense of style and some C-cups, and the confidence I was lacking years ago. On this particular night, I'm wearing glittery white stilettos, tight green leggings, and a silky white V-necked cropped top. I was single and definitely flaunting it. Sure enough, T and I make eye contact, and it was lightning. We both stopped whatever conversations we were having and instantly made our way through the crowd to each other. I'll never forget the shock in his eyes as he looked me over and stammered, Is that you? You look amazing." We ended up catching up over the next few hours. He's newly single. Our friends told me the ex was a miserable, not nice person to be around, has a great job in finance, and is overall doing pretty well. I mentioned how I too have a great job, and we touched on those embarrassing grade school days and how he always wondered why I was so nice to everyone but him. Facepalm. We danced, laughed, took snaps together, and were sending them to mutual friends who were all making comments along the lines of, "Finally," or "Can't believe you two are together." Guess I didn't do as well as I thought in hiding my fondness for him. At one point, we were all walking to the next bar, a huge group of his friends and mine, and he pulled me into a small alley, pushed me into the brick wall, and passionately kissed me. I tried to play sexy cool, but my internal voice was screaming with joy. We get to the next bar, and boom, the mood of him and his/our friends changes like they saw a murder happen. His vindictive ex was there, with a permanent scowl on her face that apparently she always has. I've met her a few times since then, and yeah, she is genuinely not a nice person. She glares over T and all of us, and for the rest of the night stood right next to him, glaring at any girl that even remotely spoke to him. So that was that. I went on to enjoy my night and keep this "guess it wasn't meant to be" story in my memory banks. He's no longer with a not nice girl, and we've casually run into each other briefly. We're both still successful and happy, but I'm now engaged to the most wonderful man, and wish that T has found the same happiness. My girlfriends still ask "What if you guys hooked up that night?" or "Why didn't you call him the next day?" We exchanged some texts, but I was happy being single and did not want to get involved with any potential drama that he was clearly still going through with his ex. Maybe this is just dude bias here, but I feel bad for the guy. Like, that drama OP mentioned could have just been one-sided on his ex's part. Like, he could have been so done and over with it, but just because she showed up, him and OP never got a chance. I'm a believer in whatever will be, but also, I understand OP's friends' questions. What if? Story 15. She was murdered in a murder self-unaliving in Scottsdale back in 2011. She came home to North Carolina to visit a few weeks beforehand, and we caught up over dinner and coffee. Her college boyfriend screwed her up pretty badly. Controlling, manipulative, abusive, and after she left him, he stalked her to the point that she dropped out. Her lifelong struggle with an eating disorder worsened as her general mental health worsened. She ended up back home and married an airman at what was then Pope AFB for the insurance. It was a loveless marriage born out of necessity, not uncommon around military bases, and they were divorced by the time she died. They PCS'd to South Dakota, where she met a much older rich man who split his time between there and Scottsdale. Her and the husband split. It was amicable. They were visiting North Carolina together when I saw her, and she moved to Scottsdale. She saw this older man on and off for a few years before finally calling it off completely. She was getting everything back on track and starting to do really well. When she got back to Scottsdale after the trip home, he called her over to his house and ended her life as soon as he opened the door. Then he shot himself. She was just 24, coming up on 10 years, and I'm still heartbroken over it. Story 16. I pined so hard for my grade school and high school crush. She was popular and I was invisible. Very small town. And I don't know if I ever said more than 3 or 4 sentences to her in all the years we were in school together. 35 years later, I found myself widowed, just turned 50, and decided one day, hell with it, ask her out. We had been Facebook friends for years with the usual reunion messages, so I asked her out via Messenger, and she accepted. We dated a few times over 2 weeks. Didn't get a kiss until the third date, and I started to see some red flags. She was very evasive with her answers and downright secretive about many things. We saw each other nightly for 3 weeks and it all went off the rails. She, quote, accidentally set her mobile home on fire the night I broke it off. She moved out of state and is now a ghost of mistakes past. Although, 14-year-old me still misses her. I believe now she was some type of entertainer, like truck stops and Craigslist. I dodged a gigantic bullet, and learned the lesson that sometimes the dream is better than reality. Story 17. I met her at the beginning of 9th grade during our orientation. I thought she was super cute. We ended up getting grouped together for an icebreaker activity, and she was an absolute sweetheart too. This was the first real crush I think I ever had. First semester of high school, we had absolutely no classes together, and I basically never saw her after orientation day. Fast forward to second semester, and we have geography together. She tells me she has a boyfriend who is 18 and bragged about banging without a rubber, but it's okay. Women can't get pregnant if they're on top. Okay. We talked during the class a lot, but I had the self-confidence of a wet napkin, so I never made an attempt to chat with her outside of school. She disappeared after that year, and I assumed she had moved to another school. Fast forward to 12th grade, and we had a class together. She was back. Turns out she did switch schools for about 6 months. Then she took some time off school to raise her kid. Whoops. I guess women can get pregnant if they're on top. Who knew gravity would be such a cruel mistress? For a teen mom, she seemed to have her crap together. You know, as best you can for a 17-year-old single mom. She was determined to get her diploma, had a plan for a college degree and a career after college, and talked about how much she loved her son and how smart he was for his age. She lost all her appeal for 17-year-old me, but damn, did I respect the hell out of her for it. Fast forward about 4 years later. I'm sitting in a fast food restaurant at 11 p.m. waiting for my food, and a couple of sloppy drunk girls stumble through the door. One is bawling her eyes out and the other is trying to calm her down a bit. Surprise! It was my ultimate high school crush. She recognized me and we chatted for a bit. Turns out she got in an argument with her boyfriend that night. He got physical, and she left and got drunk. After chatting for 10 minutes, she asked if she could spend the night with me. My brain went 100 miles a minute. I mean, on one hand, she was my high school crush. On the other, this was a whole bag of nope. It seemed like an opportunity to potentially grow a relationship with her, but I decided declining was smarter. A couple more years go by and car breaks down, so I'm taking the bus to work. One of the stops was in front of a school. Sure enough, my crush gets on at the school, except this time I didn't recognize her. Luckily, she still recognized me. She had gone from 1 kid to 3, had some really rough-looking home tattoos, and has gained about 60 pounds. We caught up and chatted. She didn't seem very happy in life and was living off welfare with her 3rd baby daddy. She was a shell of the person I knew in high school. It was like all of her motivation to better herself went out the window years ago. It was super heartbreaking to see her like that, but I'm hoping we bump into each other again one day, and that this story has a happier ending. Story 18. 2 years after high school, her and her boyfriend got into perks/Xans, and the boyfriend passed away from an overdose. Years later, I discovered she lived in my complex, and she learned of my crush of her in high school. We hooked up at a kickback I invited her to at my place. At my place, she starts explaining how a member of an extremely popular music group, my age, from my hometown, is, quote, obsessed with her and how they had a thing. She explains the guy is calling and calling her and she felt the need to talk to him. I never verified how true this actually was. Lots of people in this thread would recognize his name. He's not in said music group anymore. Anyway, after we hooked up, my idealized view of her in high school basically vanished completely. I sat on my couch for a day feeling somewhat pathetic for holding her so high, and kinda just giving myself away for banging because it was her. Really could have spent that time making myself better instead. Story 19. Girl 1 was kind of an awful person once I got to know her, trying to get other girls' boyfriends to cheat, take advantage of dudes who liked her to get them to pay for things, etc. Ended up marrying some friend of hers who offered to give her his check from being in the army. Then he got her pregnant, then some other woman pregnant, then he broke her arm. Last I heard, she got out of there and moved back to her parents. Girl 2 I met after I realized Girl 1 was a disaster of a person. Had friend who knew about Girl 1, but not that I was off that train. He told me he was into Girl 2, so I stepped back. Friend never makes a move and drags it out right until before graduation, all while I find out Girl 2 is crushing on me. I find out from that said friend she got married and she went to get her microbiology degree and seems happy. I'm happy that it all worked out for her so far. She really deserves it. Girl 3 was stuck between me and her cheating baby daddy. Her close friend was pushing hard for baby daddy over me. I ended up pushing her away because I didn't want to come between the kid's dad, even though he was garbage. Baby daddy cheated again. Now, though, she's with an awesome dude who treats her and her daughter super well, and hey, it's awesome. Story 20. Crush 1 graduated valedictorian, went to Harvard, and eventually became a lawyer in the Obama administration. She's still working in the DC area, I'm pretty sure, though I haven't talked to her in more than 20 years. Crush 2 is a counselor at a rehab facility back home. Haven't really talked to her in years either. She has one of those pyramid scheme makeup company sales jobs in her spare time, and I removed her on Facebook rather than be subjected to watching makeup videos all the time. Crush number 3. Technically a college crush, is a registered nurse at a hospital back home. She has a kid, isn't married or in a stable relationship, but seems to be doing okay. Crush number 4. Eventually got married, had a kid, had a miscarriage, and I'm not really sure what she does, but I know she is super religious and homeschools her kid. Crush number 5. Best friends of crush number 2. Eventually had babies with a white supremacist, and I haven't been friends with her on Facebook for years because of her stance on minorities. She lived for like a year and a half in San Diego, so she has a, quote, experienced POV about race that I couldn't possibly understand, as I live in Toronto, where about 51% of the population is comprised of minorities, and I work in an inner-city school in which no more than 3 of my students per year are white. Incidentally, crush number 2 eventually married a man of African-American descent, so she doesn't talk to crush number 5 anymore for obvious reasons. Story 21. I still dream of her. She was actually my high school sweetheart. I was awful to her. I neglected her and I took her for granted, and she loved me dearly. I planned to break up with her after high school. She was going to school in a different state, and I didn't wish to maintain a long-distance relationship. Still, we kept in touch. One day she met someone who expressed interest in her, and my confidence was shattered. I panicked, I cried, and immediately the following Monday I traveled to surprise her, take her from class, and win back our love. I took her to an aquarium, and I got us a hotel for the weekend, and our love was rekindled. And from then on, I was determined to earn her love. Her parents didn't approve. They were devout Christians and knew I didn't believe in God. It placed a considerable amount of stress on their relationship, so I faked it, for her and for us. She knew I could never be sincere in my belief, but she appreciated my effort. Eventually, our relationship had to be kept secret from her family. They could not tolerate me as an influence in her life anymore. So in secret, every other week, I would retrieve her from her school in the next state and bring her to stay with me for the weekend, before returning her before her classes on Monday. Eventually, she wished to return home to be closer with me, and her parents knew this. They despised me even more. One day, the original boy to express his interest in her informed her he was coming to town for work. She asked permission to spend time with him during his visit. I told her she didn't need my permission. They spent a lot of time together that visit, and subsequent ones, and eventually she confessed she wasn't being fair to me, and that was that. They married later on. His faith was more agreeable to her parents. They have a beautiful family. I am truly happy she was able to find the life she wanted, but I'm not sure I ever got any closer from the end of that. Several partners later, that one still has pain. Story 22. I have 2. He is actually a great human being, still one of my closest friends, and I'm good friends with his girlfriend as well. Both hard workers and the kindest, most genuine human beings I've ever met. I'm glad things never worked out between us, because we wouldn't have lasted, and I'd be sad to have lost him as a friend over something like that. Of the friends I had in high school, I'm glad he's still one of 4 I talk to. She is an insult to humans, teachers, everyone, everywhere, takes no responsibility for anything, blames everyone else for her problems, and will lie to your face and then turn around and tell someone else the opposite. I've had this happen. Heard her tell the opposite to someone when she thought I was out of earshot. She was also a huge transphobe, homophobe, and racist prick on top of it. Definitely dodged a bullet there. Story 23. 1. One of my biggest high school crushes turned completely wild. She got breast implants and started showing them off a lot, wearing lots of skimpy outfits, working at Twin Peaks, etc. She's completely different than she was in high school. 2. A girl I had a crush on during my freshman and sophomore year. She ended up becoming an NFL cheerleader for a few years, but then she got pregnant by the guy she had been with since halfway through her junior, my freshman year, and then engaged to him. She also got a house with the guy. However, I haven't heard about this girl in over a year, so I don't know what her life is like now. For all I know, she might not be with the dude anymore. 3. One of my favorite girls got preggo halfway through her junior year. I was a freshman, and she took her senior year online. Broke up with the baby daddy a few months after the baby turned a year old. In September 2018, she started dating a new guy and became pregnant by him almost a year later. They eventually got engaged, but I found out that she recently broke up with him and is now dating a guy she was best friends with back in middle school. I slightly knew him when I was in middle school, haven't talked to him since I was in 6th grade. The girl I mentioned above is doing good now. Her first baby is now 6 and he's doing well. Second baby is almost a year old, and she's pretty happy. Her and I are still best friends, and her family treats me like family as well. Story 24. One works as a supermarket cashier and has gained a lot of weight. Still cute when she smiles, but I haven't actually gotten to talk to her since not very long after I graduated high school. Another is going out with my best friend from high school. They have their moments where I think they have to be done after this, but it always works out. It's hard on them because he's in the military, so the only time they get to be together is when he's on shore leave. Another one has become butch and is dating a girl. This one was weird because I had a crush on her right up until she started going out with this girl, which was in my freshman year of college, and we had done some very couplish things. I'd seen her change more than once and we've cuddled more than once, but my attraction to her died right away when she got someone else. And the last one is the saddest, 'cause she's the one I felt the strongest about. I haven't talked to her since she went to her college the first time. I should have asked her for her number back then, but I was way too much of a hyper-nervous idiot. Oh, what if she takes it the wrong way? Oh, you stupid moron. She literally couldn't take it the wrong way since you are madly in love with her. And even if she gets upset, who gives a crap? You're both going off to college and will likely never see each other again. Story 25. We dated for about 4 years, both in and out of high school, lived together for about a year. It was lovely, but we had to break things off relatively naturally as a means of growing up. She's one of my closest friends to this day. We both had kids with our respective partners at about the same time 6 years ago. We are both 31-year-old millennials who've had ups and downs in our lives. The kids are good friends, which is adorable in a satisfying way. She went off into hippie woo-woo land for a bit and does astrology charts, while I went into trade skills. We simply couldn't be partners again, but we've still always been there for each other in the best way we can. We still say I love you after phone calls, and my relationship with her is one of the most defining parts of my emotional maturity as an adult, making me a better partner to my current love of my life, who I'm happily raising a son with today. This just feels like a beautiful example of how love can be a moment in your life, as a lot of high school romances are, I would assume. Really connecting with a person helps you grow, and sometimes you grow apart, and sometimes you stay together, and that's awesome, but it can be awesome the other way too. Good for you, OP. Story 26. I discovered my crush when he was a senior and I was a sophomore. I would purposely walk a certain route to my English class because I knew I'd see him. I was super shy and just awkward. He didn't even know who I was. Never spoke a word to him in high school. Fast forward 8 years and I get a Facebook request from him. A random connection he made because he thought I was pretty and we went to the same high school. I was much more confident and pretty cute if I say so myself. Long story short, we ended up dating, and I was way too embarrassed to ever admit I had a stalker-ish crush. He was super close to his mom, like she did his laundry and cooked for him most nights, and we just didn't click on a variety of things, so I ended things after a few months. He was really attractive, but ultimately that's not enough to keep a relationship going. Kinda happy that I at least got to find that out. My 15-year-old self would have had the ultimate confidence boost if she knew what was coming. Story 27. One of mine became a hell of a story. We met in high school theater and hit it off immediately. People thought we were dating. We both had a big crush on each other. She was funny, mature, adventurous, fearless, and blunt. She had green eyes and black hair, which I found really beautiful. I was a senior, and eventually found out she was actually a freshman. So the age gap meant there was no way I was going to act on my crush, despite her pressuring me to do so. She accepted it though, and we became good friends for a little over a semester when she left to go to military school. Turns out she'd been the target of a harassment campaign by a lot of her fellow classmates after she fooled around with 2 guys at once. We kept in touch for a bit. About a year later, we went ice skating with her new girlfriend, who she had met at military school, and then lost touch. About 7 years later, I found her on OkCupid. We matched, and it seemed like she didn't remember who I was. We had one really fun date where I took her behind the scenes of the zoo I worked at and got along great, just like old times. But then she ghosted me. 3 years later, though, she connected with me on Facebook through mutual interests like scuba. She actually had worked for the diving boat company that took my graduate school class on a field excursion in the Bahamas. When we eventually started hanging out, I brought up that we knew each other in high school and had gone on a date before. Turns out she had serious retrograde amnesia from multiple traumatic brain injuries and had struggled for years with alcoholism and drug issues, which only exacerbated things. The date we had was right before her low point that got her to sober up. She also opened up about her history of abuse, including when she was a child, which in turn led her to not really seek many attachments and seeing relationships and banging as mostly transactional. She said she almost never opened up like that to anyone, and our friendship really grew and deepened. We became super close, and she jokingly called us twins. Things were great. We were friends again after a decade apart, and tons of traumatic events had passed while we'd been apart, but our friendship felt like no time had passed. Except for the awkwardness of me knowing we had a history and acting accordingly and her remembering almost none of it. So she acted like this was a new friendship for the most part, but stupidly I wanted it to grow into something more. She said she wasn't interested and in fact was interested in one of my coworkers, so I facilitated them getting in touch, but it didn't go anywhere. In the meantime, we kept hanging out and going on adventures, including being platonically naked around each other, went to a body painting event, and even doing some platonic kink at events and in private. She even had me tie her up and spank her so she could send pictures to one of the people she was seeing. We were both non-monogamous, but neither of us were in a serious relationship. Then, on a camping trip, it was me, my crush, and an older trans woman who I'd fooled around with before, all in a tent at an event that was clothing optional. The dam broke. She watched me and the other woman fool around, and then my crush and I kissed for the first time and made plans to do more the next day. We took a trip into a wild cave with a bunch of friends, then told our friends to go ahead without us, and after some gentle ribbing from our friends, they left us alone in the biggest room of the cave. We laid down a blanket, lit some candles, did some foreplay, dripped some of the hot wax on her, and after removing most of the wax, we banged for the first time. It was amazing. We both went for several rounds. After this, we were pretty much inseparable, and had some of the best banging sessions of our lives. Even later, we both felt so. Before we got together, we had been planning a trip to Europe together as friends. Now we had to call all the hotels and change our rooms so we could be sleeping together. The trip to Europe started off amazing. We went on some incredible adventures in England, Scotland, and Germany, and spent one full day just doing it. Then, by the middle of the second week, we started butting heads. Up until now, I had mostly ignored that she was incredibly selfish and materialistic and dishonest and a bit of a klepto, but when traveling together and with her doing some creative accounting on how we needed to split travel costs, I started feeling cheated. If I brought it up, she would just withhold affection until I gave in and let her have her way. We fought and made up for the next week. Not my best moments. We would fight, make up. She would have me buy her things to win back her affection while making me compete with other men and women she was seeing for a place as one of her actual partners and not just a screw buddy. After the trip was over, we had a big fight and I left her. A lot of people had seen the way she treated me and tried to get me to open my eyes, but I'd been caught up with the idea of reconnecting with someone from my past, especially since the connection had been so incredible and passionate once it happened. It took me a long time to let go. We kept reconnecting as friends, but the same dynamic eventually always developed, including her stealing stuff from me or withholding her share of group expenses, like a cabin trip with 8 people. So I would cut her off, then always eventually tell myself that I'd been too harsh, and let her back into the friend group. It was super toxic, but once enough time had passed, a few years, it seemed like we actually could be friends. I met her new wife and we got along great. My new girlfriend was indifferent to them both, but was worried about me. She was right, but I was still in denial and thought things would be fine. Since we were all non-monogamous, eventually my crush and I had the chance to go camping with some friends, and the 4 of us had planned on fooling around a bit. That ended up not happening, but the weekend went fine. We made plans to do a kinky Thanksgiving with a group of people, and I'd bring my dog since he got along well with her dog. Then, the day I was driving down, she said, "I didn't know your dog was coming," and called off the entire event. leaving me and two of my friends stranded halfway through the 6-hour drive. That was the final straw, and I cut off contact completely. But her wife stayed Facebook friends with me since her wife had nothing to do with any of it. She was a genuinely nice person. A few months later, her wife liked and commented on some of my posts. I asked her how things were going. Her wife then opened up and revealed she had been in the exact same kind of toxic, manipulative, abusive relationship with my crush that I had been, and they were getting divorced. My crush had kept their house and kicked out the wife. Worse still, the final straw for the wife was when my crush had forced her extremely lesbian wife into a trio with a guy my crush was seeing, who was also a Trump supporter. I had a really cathartic talk with the wife about all our shared trauma and the very similar experiences we had had. I put her in touch with some friends of mine who lived in her area in case she needed a local support network. And that's my story. I probably didn't go enough into the abuse I was put through, but that's because I tried to write this with my mindset at that time. It was only later that I realized that the whole relationship, even before we did anything, was her being manipulative, selfish, stealing from me, making me work for any affection or even friendship, and horribly guilting me if I raised any objection. Hopefully you felt it too, but I had no idea where this story was going at any point. I was surprised by many things for, many reasons, and I was kind of hoping for a happier ending. Oh well, hard to write happy endings when it involves someone like that, I guess. Story 28. Elementary/middle school crush. Lost contact in high school. Didn't see him for about 10 to 15 years, then went to a friend's apartment for the first time on a Saturday night. Some dude was hanging outside my friend's window. Ground level unit and no shades, just staring at me during the visit. My friend invited him in as he was a neighbor. The man had a scraggly 5 o'clock shadow and was emaciated and haggard. He explained all 4 women he was seeing had come to his apartment and they didn't know about each other, and the 17-year-old was pregnant, so he needed some drugs till the girls went away because he didn't know what to do. Then the man looked down at me and asked if I was my full name, and stated his own. It took a solid minute of racking my brain for his name to connect his face to the boy I knew him as. He used to be really good at maths and baseball, and I saw with the dismay the only thing he was wearing were baseball motif pajama pants as the connection dawned on me. We had a conversation catching up in disbelief at how our lives had diverged and ended back in the same town. Then he did some drugs, got frustrated it wasn't working for him, and left in a huff. That was the last time I saw him. That week, he ended up drowning in the ocean, and I have a feeling it wasn't an accident. I felt too out of touch to contact his family to attend the funeral, but heard the underage kid kept his child. What a strange world. Story 29. Blonde, buxom cheerleader, funny and quite modest despite her awesome looks, that dated the QB in high school, had a huge crush on her. Bumped into her on Facebook when social media was beginning, about 6 years after high school. I was totally not seeking her approval, just having fun talking and teasing her. She then asked me out about a year after that just for a drink. Not interested, but I went anyway. Made fun of her playfully, but harder than I meant it to be. She was hooked. We dated on and off for 3 years. I was pretty proud of myself for finally dating the hottest girl from my hometown, in my mind, but it turned out she was boring. No conversation material whatsoever and wasn't motherly material, so I dumped her. Banging was incredible, but that's it. She now has 4 kids, a part-time job, and an alcoholic husband. Life seems bland, but she seems happy. I just don't care at all. Story's conclusion. The attraction you felt all those years ago and your teenager's perspective of another person is skewed by hormones and lack of life experience. High school crush is an illusion. Screw her if you can, just tell yourself you were able to do it, and then move on. To me, this post just reads like one of those alpha male dating coaches or something. Rubs me the wrong way. Something about the way this guy talks. Specifically about women. I don't know, just weird, man. Story 30. Mine is kind of sad. She lived a door or so down from me when we were kids and played together, but they moved a few miles away later, and I only saw her in school. We were in junior high school together and moved in different circles. We also went to the same church, but she didn't come near as often as I had to. Kind of the same in high school, just say hi, more or less. I called her Miss America because she seemed to have it all going for her. Very long blonde hair, great figure, winning smile. She was also the head cheerleader and the class valedictorian from a class of close to 600. Our parents became friends after I left for the military, and this is how I found out about her life after high school. She went off to college on a full-ride scholarship. She got 2 degrees, one in biology and one in elementary education, only 200 miles away. She met a guy at a pizza joint she was also working at and married the guy. She was home visiting visiting her parents when her brother called. He was going to college there too, and he told her he was stopping by her place, but saw her husband and waitress from the restaurant going into the house as he was pulling up. He said he had been sitting outside the house for an hour and she had not come out. Well, her parents drove there and walked in on hubby and waitress still in bed. It came to light during the divorce that their intimate life was basically assault. He had somehow convinced this wonderful woman that she was useless and no one would want her but him. After college, she went to work for an oil company, but after a few years got tired of it and went to chiropractic school. While in school, she met a guy and they married and set up separate practices. She had a boy and got pregnant with the second one when she found out hubby number 2 was cheating on her with a receptionist. Well, during that divorce, he drove a motorcycle in front of a truck. His parents sued her for both practices and for custody of both kids. She ended up paying them some money to go away. Several years later, she came down with cancer and managed to fight it off, but a few years later it came back, and she died from it. Not too long before a class reunion. I was hoping to see her. Story 31. Mine turned out to be an adult content star. Technically, she was my junior high crush, 7th grade. I've lived most of my life in the South, but I spent a couple of years in the Midwest in the mid-late 90s. This girl was my absolute crush the whole time I knew her there. Really smart, sweet girl, was a cheerleader, was surely out of my league as a somewhat shy band kid, but she and I were definitely friends. I didn't just admire her from afar, even if she didn't seem to have the same feelings back. I actually even asked her out on a date just before moving back to my home state. We went out and saw a movie in theaters, couldn't tell you what. She wrote her phone number in my yearbook and we kept in touch for a year or so after I moved away with occasional calls, letters, and she even sent me some pictures before just drifting out of touch. So anyway, cut to the late 2000s, somewhere around 11 or 12 years ago. And yeah, I definitely stumbled across her professional work. If that's not clear enough, let's just say nobody told me she was working in adult content. It's pretty wild going from wondering what happened to your middle school crush to finding out exactly where she ended up all in one instant. I'm not sure if I should say who it is. It's not like I'd be outing her. She was a very prominent public figure in that world at least, and even won a few AVNs, basically adult content Oscars for those unfamiliar. And obviously I would never give out any of her personal information, and frankly, I don't have anything negative to say about her. She was really cool to me at an awkward time in my life, like middle school is for most people. Honestly, I thought she was really special. I guess I wasn't the only one. Story 33. Well, my straight crush, who didn't go to my school but was my main crush for the first 2 years of high school, got married to some guy and had 2 kids. She's doing well for herself and is generally happy and is a hair/wig stylist. Now, my gay crush got even better looking. He was a class clown, but was always really nice to me, gave me rides home and to work, and even gave me his jacket off his shoulders cause I said it looked nice. I still have it years later. But he was always smart, despite me thinking he probably would have fell by the wayside at first. But now he's fit. He's a personal trainer, he works as security at a dispensary, probably is more involved in that particular company, and he owns his own business where he mows the grass on the highways, junk removal, salts parking lots for other businesses, etc. He does it all. And if it sounds like I still have the hots for him, I do. Story 34. He was a grade ahead of me, and I spent my whole junior year totally goo-goo-eyed about him. He graduated, and I still randomly saw him around because we had mutual friends, but nothing came of it. After I graduated, a very tragic event happened that pulled me closer to a group of friends I didn't really see much. One of them was best friends with my crush. Naturally, we started hanging out in groups, and then we eventually started dating. I was over the moon. Over a couple of months, I started seeing what a mess he had become. I was in college, living on my own, working and learning how to be an adult. He lived at home, no shade, we were young, didn't have a job, and relied on his parents for everything. That wasn't that bad. He was always coming up with new ideas and schemes for what he wanted to do with his life. None of them ever panned out, and there was a new harebrained idea basically every week. Eventually, I felt like he was weighing me down, and I ended it. We're friends on Facebook, and from what I see and hear from our mutual friends, nothing has changed. He's in his mid-30s and still has no discernible skills or career prospects. I compare our lives now and wonder what I ever saw in him, besides a cute face, which has not aged well, to be honest. Dodged a bullet, I feel. Story 35. Remember Lindsay Lohan from the Mean Girls era? Cute, Bright, red hair, freckles. My crush in high school was every bit of that pretty. She even had that sort of raspy voice. Perfect figure, smelled good too. She changed throughout high school. By the end, she dropped out. She, the high school crush, slept around a good bit and used to have a habit of leaving on a whim to hitchhike to California using herself as payment for rides. Over time, she seemed to develop some kind of drug habit, and without Lindsay Lohan's money, became rather skanky. She was, however, the only person I knew who A, came to see me in college, and B, tried to keep in touch over the years. We almost hooked up, but she said her husband, about to be ex, would be in prison for another 5 years because of, quote, what he did to the kids? Whatever the hell that meant. I noped out. Hope she's okay though. Story 36. I still see my high school crush, B, regularly. He knows I liked him and still do. I finally told him last year after 24 years. We were in 6th form together, and I'd always had a crush on one of his friends, A, but I rarely spoke to him, always choosing to speak to B instead. Every time I was around A, I'd get butterflies, feel giddy, etc. What I didn't realize until the night of the 6th form prom was that I had those feelings for B, not A. B and A always hung around together and I got confused. I was a shallow, awful 18-year-old, and A was tall, athletic, and blonde, whereas B was short and fat. I just didn't look past the physical, but if I bothered to, I would have seen that B was the fun one. I had so much in common with him. Looking back, I was always trying to impress B with my geek or music knowledge, and trying to catch his eye with the makeup or clothes I wore. I remember on one non-uniform day in particular, I borrowed my cousin's Iron Maiden patch denim jacket to impress B, but at the time, I didn't even realize what I was doing. On the night of the prom, A ended up with another girl, and I was surprised that I wasn't really that bothered. And when another one of B's friends, N, told me that B had a crush on me, it was like a light bulb going off in my head. I sought him out immediately, and we danced. He was drunk and ran off to be sick, and I didn't see him again for the rest of the night. Next time I saw B was our A-level maths exam about 3 days later. He barely even looked at me. I surmised he never actually liked me, and N was obviously just making a joke at my expense. I went home and cried my eyes out. I wish I'd said something sooner. That was the last proper time I saw B. I tried contacting him through Facebook a couple of times, but no reply. In my head, he was always the one who got away, but my feelings didn't totally go away. I often thought of him. 3 years ago, I received an email from N. He had a weekly gaming group of 4. One of the 4 had dropped out and asked if I would be interested in joining. N knew I was into board games, and despite not seeing him for over 20 years, I jumped in at the chance. Also, the fact that B would be part of the group was a huge bonus. The first time I walked into N's house and saw B, the last 20-odd years just melted away. He hadn't really changed, but then again, neither did I. We hit it off again, and the old chemistry was back. All my feelings returned, and I fell for him properly. We got closer and closer, and I thought that eventually something would happen between us, but I knew he was shy, so I didn't want to scare him off. Then he dropped a bombshell. He said he's not interested in relationships, and he's asexual. I did know that he had a hard time with anything physical, including hugs and even a friendly tap on the arm, but that was a blow. I was gutted. In fact, gutted doesn't really cover it. I started dating again and met someone. It took me 6 months to tell B, and I also finally told him that I had feelings for him. He played it cool, but was very surprised when I told him I liked him more than a friend. He asked why I hadn't told him sooner, and I told him I didn't know whether he liked me back or not. And hey, I still don't know. This week I'll have been with my partner M for a year. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we've not seen each other as much as we would have liked. And obviously, I've not seen my gaming group, including B, as much as I'd like. I'm happy with M, but there will always be that tiny part of me that will always carry a torch for B. So, OP, I just need to get something straight here, because you say that you're not sure if he liked you back after you mentioned that he said he wasn't interested in relationships in general. I don't know how to tell you this. I don't think your odds were great. Story 37. Didn't really have crushes in high school, so I'll just mention the girls I dated instead, since I guess technically they were crushes shortly before we got together. First one, married and presumably happy. We're still friends, I suppose, but we don't really talk since I deleted Facebook. I actually ended up hanging out with her husband way more because we had a lot more in common. And also he shares my first name, which is hilarious, but we just took it in stride. Cool dude, happy for her. Second one, best friend of the first. died in a car crash. This changed me permanently. This is why I stayed good friends with the first one. We had a lot to deal with together after that. First one, just after high school, is married with kids, which is unsurprising because near the end of us being involved, she would squeal babies and look at me anytime anyone said the word baby in any context, so good for her, I guess. But guys, wear protection. Story 38. She was actually my very first elementary school crush until my dad was arrested and deported. I had to change schools/neighborhoods to live in my uncle's garage, and we lost touch. Fast forward to high school, and she was in my grade 9 PE class. We immediately started flirting and had this will they, won't they thing until I dropped out after 10th grade and left for trade school to get my computer repair certification and got with a girl from my computer class. She later found me on social media and we would always joke around randomly until she got married to a Marine from our high school on a Saturday, but that following Thursday we got together, played pool, had drinks, and smashed while he was on deployment. I'm not proud of it, but hey, he turned out to be a huge jerk later, so screw him. They later had 2 kids, divorced, and she's now a pretty successful accountant for one of the local tribe casinos. We still joke and flirt and meet up from time to time when she's free to get manhandled, but I'm not really relationship material these days for several reasons. But she just brings out this carefree child in me, and I will always have love for her no matter how old we get or how many relationships come and go. I'm damaged goods at this point, but I'm glad she's independent, happy, healthy, and successful. Story 39. High school girlfriend. 2 years after high school, we got engaged. A month later, her college friends convinced her to cheat on me, and a week after, dump me for a car salesman her age. At least she returned the ring, I guess. Good, smart girl for a lot of things, but did that hurt. Crush I knew from middle school band through high school. Saw her on Facebook during my 20s and invited her out on a date. Her twin sister had done better and got married, but the one I took on a single date treated me like a wallet, acted like a Karen, and was a real female dog through the date. At first I tried to have a conversation, but after a while, just tagged along to be in awe of how much she had changed. I seemed to attract all the odd ones. Dated a few other girls during my 20s and some flings in between, but yeah, would be nice to have a reciprocal crush again. Story 40. Funny timing. Just the other day I wondered whatever happened to her. My first crush was back in 5th grade. The only girl who was ever nice to me throughout elementary school, and she always remarked I had pretty eyes, even years later. Never made a move because sexuality in general just terrified me up until the end of middle school. Last time I had heard anything was about 5 years ago, and I found out she moved across the country to the East Coast, cleaned up off a nasty drug habit, and had a kid with a crappy boyfriend/manager. Decided to check up on Facebook, and her page was listed as a remembrance page. I tried Googling her name and found the story. She moved back to California and died 2 years ago after swerving into a semi-truck just outside of LA. Drugs were believed to be a contributing factor. I've known a decent number of people that have died, but this is probably the closest it's come to me or my age range, and with any kind of personal connection. So it's been a weird thing to process. Story 41. He was my best friend. I had a major crush on him but valued our friendship more than me making an awkward move and getting rejected and ruining the friendship, so I never told him. He married someone just after high school and moved away. His wife doesn't let him stay in much contact with me. I'm a showgirl and that makes people uncomfortable. Totally understandable though. She made him block me on social media, so I ended up losing him anyway. He looks to have a good life, steady job, and nice house. Still does the same fun things he had interest in when he was young, and doesn't seem to have any complaints about how his life turned out. I'm happy for him. I still think about him almost every day though. I really should have just told him. Story 42. He stayed on as the janitor at the school we went to after graduation. Absolutely no shade to janitors because bless those folks for doing the hard work, but it was just very evident this guy had no plans for himself. I, on the other hand, had a plan for my life and goals and went in to achieve them. Also, as it turns out, we possibly could have been related distantly because a year or so after we graduated, my family received an invitation to a family reunion with his last name, and it was in the tiny little town he was from. I asked my parents and they were like, "Oh yeah, I think our great aunt is their great grandmother or something." Imagine if we would have gotten together or whatever and I would have had to been like, "Oh, hey Aunt Ida," and he would have been like, "Oh, hey Grandma Ida." Hilarious. Yikes. That would have been a wild thing to find out. Just both getting invitations to a family reunion and being like, oh yeah, sorry, I'm gonna have to leave town for a bit. Got an invitation to a thing. Oh, no way, you too? That's crazy. Yeah, where are you going? Oh no. Anyway, that's the last story we have for today. I'd like to thank you all so much for watching this shorter than usual video. I hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are, and I will see you in the next one.